Welcome to Canadian Football League Weekly, presented by the World of Football. Each week, we recap the games played up north in the CFL, and we also look ahead to next week's games. Our mission here is to educate American football fans on the teams and players in the CFL in the hopes that they will come to love the league as much as we do. I'm Randy Snow, and I'm joined by my son, Adam.
How you doing, everybody? How you doing, Dad? Happy talking about Canadian Football League Day for us. I love it. A lot of interesting stuff happening over the weekend. The playoff race is getting tight, so I'm ready to go when you are.
Yeah, well, we got a full slate of games, four games this week, so let's get right into it. On Friday night, it was the Hamilton Tiger Cats versus the Toronto Argonauts. In the second quarter, Toronto quarterback Chad Kelly threw a touchdown pass to wide receiver Mackay Polk, and then a two-point conversion gave Toronto an 18-11 lead. Hamilton took the lead 21-18 in the third quarter after a 2-yard touchdown run by running back Ante Litre. In the fourth quarter, Kelly scored his second rushing touchdown of the game, and Toronto led 28-27 with under 3 minutes to play. But it was Hamilton kicker Mark Leggio who kicked the game-winning 48-yard field goal as time expired, giving Hamilton a 33-31 win. Hamilton quarterback Bo Levi Mitchell completed 31 of 40 passes for 362 yards and a touchdown. Wide receiver Shamar Bridges had 6 catches for 82 yards, and kicker Mark Leggio was 6 for 6 on field goals, including the game winner. Toronto quarterback Chad Kelly completed 17 of 26 passes for 255 yards and a touchdown. He also ran 5 times for 19 yards and scored 2 rushing touchdowns. Wide receiver Devarius Daniels had 4 catches for 118 yards, and kicker Lyram Hiralahu made 3 field goals. Yeah, this was a game dominated by the kickers. There were 9 total field goals in this game, 6 by one team, 3 by the other. And the other fact about this game is that Hamilton sweeps the 3-game series with Toronto this year. So I don't care what your record is, if you can defeat your opponent in all 3 games, that's a big feather in your cap. So no matter what happens to Hamilton going forward, they've had a good season because they beat Toronto 3 times.
Yeah, you beat your arch rivals, your in-province rival. That's pretty impressive. I guess I didn't realize that Toronto hadn't been able to beat them this year.
No.
And that's just, if Hamilton's able to sneak into the playoffs, I mean, that's going to be a huge deal, I think, in Hamilton's favor. I mean, they're not going to be scared of Toronto. They're the ones that got Toronto's number. So yeah. I think that's pretty interesting. I think the way this game ended, on that last second field goal, it was set up for Hamilton either way to either go into overtime or win the game. So it's kind of a win-win situation almost for them, at least, prolong the game or, get that victory. They ended up getting the victory. So kudos to Hamilton. We'll talk about the standings a little later. And boy, oh boy, it's looking ever more likely that Hamilton might just sneak into the playoffs.
Well, right now, Hamilton is 3 games behind Toronto. And if it comes down to a tiebreaker, winning those 3 games against Toronto could be the factor in it.
Well, what does that make them now? They're 5-9, 5-8.
Yeah, they're 2 or 3 games behind them.
You literally got your script in your notes with the standings right down.
That's coming up later.
It is coming later, but no, Hamilton should be, or they're 4-9 or 5-9. I don't know if your standings are updated there.
They are. I just haven't looked at them. They're either 2 or 3 games behind them. So what I'm saying is, it's close, and if it does come down to where they're tied at the end of the season, advantage Hamilton based on this game.
Yeah. On Friday night, saw the Saskatchewan Roughriders take on the Calgary Stampeders. On a 2nd-and-1 play early on in the game, backup quarterback Tommy Stevens scored on a 69-yard touchdown run, but the extra point by Rene Paredes went off the upright, leaving Calgary with a 6-0 lead early in the game. In the closing seconds of the first half, Saskatchewan quarterback Trevor Harris scored on a 1-yard touchdown run that gave Saskatchewan a 24-9 lead going into halftime. In the third quarter, a touchdown pass from Jake Mayer to Clark Barnes made the score 24-16 in favor of Saskatchewan, but the Riders answered with a touchdown pass to Keon Schaefer-Baker to extend their lead to 31-16. Calgary wide receiver Jalen Philpott caught a touchdown pass, and running back Dedrick Mills scored a rushing touchdown in the fourth, but it was not enough for Calgary as they fell to the Rough Riders 37-29. Saskatchewan quarterback Trevor Harris completed 16 of 18 passes for 248 yards and a touchdown. He also had a rushing touchdown. Running back Raquel Armstead carried the ball 25 times for 205 yards. And wide receiver Keyshawn Johnson had 6 catches for 90 yards. Wide receiver Kean Schaefer-Baker had 5 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown. For Calgary, quarterback Jake Maier completed 25 of 31 passes for 197 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Running back Dedrick Mills ran the ball 10 times for 74 yards and a touchdown, and wide receiver Jalen Philpott had 6 catches for 47 yards and a touchdown. Unbelievable that Raquel Armstead had 205 yards rushing. He got the ball 25 times, but they couldn't get him into the end zone. What a terrible, terrible thing to give that running back.
Yeah, 205 yards. That's almost twice down the field, that 110-yard field.
Yeah.
Almost 2 times down the field, and could not find those huge end zones of theirs, the 20-yard end zone, at any point in the game. That's too bad, but congratulations to him on having a great rushing game. You don't see those kind of rushing stats in the CFL. If a guy gets 50 yards on a game, he's doing really good. But 205 yards is awesome.
It's pretty good. And I mean, I don't know who I was pulling for in this game, but I was impressed though that that first touchdown for Calgary that started the game, the quarterback run by Stevens was pretty impressive. He just kind of bounced to the outside and had nothing but green grass. A couple of great blocks by his receivers there, kind of opened things up, and it's just too bad that Calgary couldn't sustain that momentum after the botched extra point. So
yeah, they only needed a yard, 2nd and 1. That's when they bring in the backup quarterback like that, and he just plunges ahead for a yard. But he slid off to his right, and there was nobody out there, and he just took off and ran. That was awesome to see.
Yeah, it was. But I mean, hey, Saskatchewan getting back in the win column, trying to stay in that playoff pool. So we'll see how things shape up for them the rest of the season.
On Saturday, it was the Montreal Alouettes versus the Ottawa Redblacks. Early in the first quarter, Montreal defensive back Deontay Ruffin intercepted a pass and returned it 79 yards for a touchdown, giving Montreal a 7-0 lead. In the second quarter, Montreal quarterback Cody Fajardo had a 1-yard rushing touchdown, extending the Alouettes' lead to 14-3. In the third quarter, Ottawa quarterback Jeremiah Masoli connected with Justin Hardy for a 25-yard touchdown, but it was not enough as Montreal won this game 24-12. Montreal quarterback Cody Fajardo completed 16 of 27 passes for 226 yards and no touchdowns. He also ran for 29 yards and had a rushing touchdown. Wide receiver Charleston Rambo led the receivers with 4 catches for 77 yards. Ottawa quarterback Drew Brown completed 8 of 16 passes for 69 yards and 2 interceptions. Quarterback Jeremiah Masoli completed 17 of 26 passes for 281 yards and a touchdown. Wide receiver Justin Hardy had 9 catches for 117 yards and a touchdown. Yeah, quarterback Drew Brown started the game for Ottawa, but he was replaced by Jeremiah Masoli in the second quarter after a slow start and 2 interceptions by Drew Brown. They said, okay, we've seen enough, and so they put in Masoli. And they've already said that Masoli is going to start the game next week versus Saskatchewan. So I don't know if Drew Brown is done for a while, but when Masoli's been in there, he's looked really good this year.
I mean, he had the couple interceptions last week after he started off looking pretty great. So I think if he's prepared and has the start, maybe he could be a big difference maker for this Ottawa team. A team that I've been saying for a while is probably the second best team in the league. They just haven't really looked like it a whole lot as of late. They've kind of dropped a couple here and there, but they still got the makings of a great team. And if Masoli can be that answer, if he gets another shot to start. And I think maybe as long as he plays well and plays turnover-free football, I mean, watch out for that Ottawa Redblacks team.
Yeah, and if he can stay healthy, that's been his problem.
Yeah,
he played well when he's in there, but he is accident-prone, and I hope he can stay healthy.
I do too, because he's a lot of fun when he's on.
Yeah.
Then on Saturday, it was the Winnipeg Blue Bombers taking on the Edmonton Elks. In the second quarter, Winnipeg quarterback Zach Collaros connected with Ontario Wilson on a touchdown pass, giving the Blue Bombers a 10-0 lead. In the third quarter, Edmonton quarterback Trey Ford found Eugene Lewis on a spectacular flea flicker touchdown pass, closing the gap to 10-7 in favor of Winnipeg. In the fourth quarter, Winnipeg extended their lead to 17-10 when Brady Oliveira found the end zone for the first time this season on a touchdown run. He added a second touchdown run late in the game as Winnipeg won their sixth game in a row, beating Edmonton 27-14. Winnipeg quarterback Zach Collaros completed 19 of 27 passes for 191 yards and a touchdown. Running back Brady Oliveira ran the ball 18 times for 127 yards and 2 touchdowns. And wide receiver Ontario Wilson had 5 catches for 55 yards and a touchdown. For Edmonton, quarterback Trey Ford completed 10 of 17 passes for 131 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Running back Justin Rankin ran the ball 14 times for 157 yards, and wide receiver Eugene Lewis had 2 catches for 44 yards and a touchdown. What a day for running backs on Saturday between the 200-yard rusher in the last game and then, not the last game, but, for the weekend, I guess.
Right.
Had a 200-yard rusher, a 150-yard rusher, but then Brady Oliveira surpassing 1,000 rushing yards during this game. It's the third 1,000-yard season of his career. Pretty cool milestone up there in the CFL.
Yeah. And Edmonton interim head coach, Jarius Jackson, announced that McLeod Bethel Thompson is going to get the start next week in the rematch with Winnipeg. Bethel Thompson is the league's third leading passer this season with over 3,000 passing yards and 19 touchdowns. They've been going back and forth with these two guys. A lot of people think that Trey Ford should be the starter, and Bethel Thompson should be, the backup. But, man, they just keep flip-flopping. I don't know if that's a good thing for this team or not. I think Bethel Thompson came in late in this game after Trey Ford threw a couple interceptions or whatever. And so, now they're going with Bethel Thompson next week. I don't get it myself.
I mean, if it weren't for Trey Ford's injuries, he probably would have stayed in the, in some of those games. Because Bethel Thompson started out the season okay, not great, but had some struggles. And it wasn't until Trey Ford gave that team a shot in the arm that seemed to pick everybody else up. Then Bethel Thompson was able to come in and play a lot better. So they've had a weird effect on one another. But now that it's like they're trending in the wrong direction, I hate seeing them because of bad play being swapped in and out. But I mean, Bethel Thompson was playing pretty decently up until, recently. And I get wanting to get Trey Ford back out there. But I mean, I guess you got to go with the hot hand, and Trey Ford was hot for a second, and then I think the injury might have cooled him off. Bethel Thompson, though, has been pretty consistent. Like you said, third leading passer in the league, so I guess you got to go with that. You got to do something a little different if you're going to play Winnipeg again back-to-back.
Yeah. Yeah, well, one other note from this game, which I wasn't aware of, Trey Ford's brother, Tyrell Ford, is a defensive back for Winnipeg, so it was brother against brother in this game. I had no idea he had a brother in the league, so that was news to me.
I believe I knew that. I just couldn't remember what team he was on.
Yeah. All right,
and of course, on by this week, the British Columbia Lions. That's why I got them on.
Okay. All right, let's take a look at the CFL standings now after Week 16. In the East Division, the Montreal Alouettes are now 11-2-1, and they've clinched a home playoff spot. Ottawa Red Blacks 8-5-1, Toronto Argonauts 7-7, and Hamilton Tiger Cats right behind them at 5-9. Winnipeg Blue Bombers in the West are 8-6. BC Lions are 7-7. Saskatchewan Roughriders 6-7-1. Edmonton Elks 5-9, and the Calgary Stampeders are 4-9-1. Looking ahead to Week 17 matchups, there's that rematch, Edmonton at Winnipeg this time on Friday night. Also on Friday night, Hamilton at BC, and on Saturday, Ottawa at Saskatchewan, and Montreal at Toronto, and Calgary is going to be on a bye this week. Yeah, something cool that came out this week was the fact, and we've talked about this before, I don't know if we talked about it on this podcast or a regular podcast, but logos for all 9 CFL teams have been unveiled just this past week, and that have been reimagined by Indigenous artists up in Canada. All the teams will be wearing their Indigenous design logos to commemorate the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation during its Week 17 games. The Calgary Stampeders will be on a bye this week. But they featured their commemorative logo in Week 15 when they played host to Montreal. And we talked about that logo because we hadn't seen the Calgary logo before, and it's pretty cool. And
Yeah.
so evidently all the teams had not had an indigenous logo up till now. I know Winnipeg did, and who was the other team? Was it BC
I
or
think Hamilton and BC and Edmonton.
yeah. So you've seen all 9 logos now. What do you think? Do you have some favorites? My personal favorite. I mean, they're all fantastic.
They're all
They're
great. I like them all.
all gorgeous. But my favorite are the Winnipeg one, which they've been using for a couple of years. The Montreal one I really like because it kind of looks like uh,
A dream
what is
catcher.
that? A dream catcher, yes. And I like the Toronto one. It's kind of the same logo, but it's got a lot more color to it, and I like that one too. So, do you have a favorite out of the ones you've seen?
I looking at those ones, I kind of like the Saskatchewan one because when I initially saw it, I was like, okay, it just looks like a stained glass window, whatever. I kind of kept scrolling, but then when I scrolled back to it, I was like, wait a minute, and looked a little closer. There's a lot of detail in there, like the buffalo in the background. I was like, that's actually pretty cool because I missed it the first time, so I like that. I like Montreal's. I mean, shoot, I like them all. Hamilton's I like quite a bit, and I really like Edmonton still. So I mean, I don't think there's a bad one of the bunch.
No.
Uh, so I think it's pretty cool what they're doing, and I hope they have uniforms to kind of go along with these indigenous logos because that would just bring the whole thing together.
Yeah, that I don't know. In the past, it's just been the helmet logo, and maybe they painted it on the field too. That's right. Edmonton was the one that's been using it for a couple of years also,
Yeah.
because I remember they had that painted on the field. So we'll see. But I'm looking forward to seeing all the teams with these logos on their helmets this coming week.
Heck yeah.
Well, that's all the time we've got for this week. Tune in again next week when Adam and I will review the games played in the Canadian Football League. We'll be doing this throughout the regular season and the postseason, as well as the 111th Grey Cup game in Vancouver, where we will be in attendance.
Yep.
So remember, some people may love football more than we do, but nobody, and I mean nobody, loves more football than Adam and I sitting here in Kalamazoo talking about Canadian football. Until next time, I'm Randy Snow.
And I'm Adam Snow.
And we'll see you next week somewhere around the 55-yard line.